Hi. I have another letter I'd like to read to you that I wrote just not long ago. I've had a number of people contact me. They read it on my website, and I'm thinking I'd like to read it here as well. You know, life can have some real tough turns and some problems. And Jesus promised us that we'd have tribulation. Sometimes we don't know what to expect, and when it comes, we wonder if that's really what he's talking about. I had one of those not long ago, and I just want to tell you about it and read this to you. I think I have it right here. It's called Apprehended. That's what I call it. Anyway, if you're following on to know the Lord, He's chosen you and He's called you for a grand purpose. I've known the Lord for almost 45 years, and for the first 30 of those years, I was engaged in ministry and learning His power and His provision, His ability to heal and to deliver. And I was engaged in public ministry, and ministry was my purpose for living. I preached, I taught what I knew, I healed the sick, cast out devils, I comforted the afflicted, and encouraged souls to believe God. I traveled North America and Central America serving the Lord. That was basically my field all over the countries. But in 2007, that's been almost 14 years it is, right now, 14 years ago, May, I was accused of a crime. I was ordered out of my home. I was put in jail about a year later for 13 months where I waited for what the courts would do to me. I contracted cancer in my throat area. I spent about a month in the hospital with 2 surgeries. I was released from the hospital and then jailed to a home of friends under house arrest to continue waiting for the courts to decide what to do with me. That was another 14 months. My wife was working a full-time job for the first time in her life, but could only earn enough money to provide basics and care for herself and for our 3 adopted daughters that we had adopted right around 97 and 2000, with 3 of them. She lost that lovely home that the Lord provided through some friends, and which we lived in for over 20 years. She and the girls moved into a nice duplex that the Lord provided through some friends, and the reader can imagine but not feel or understand the unspeakable turmoil that we were in through that time, unless, of course, you've been through it. I was threatened with a life sentence in prison. I had absolutely no idea where it was all going. It was an awful moment. I felt like I was in a shallow grave. I know what it feels like now. I could hear the voices of those around me and their footsteps on my grave, but there was no communication. Most of the other inmates in the jail treated the jail like it was just another place to sleep. Many were regular visitors. I didn't fit at all, and they knew it. Throughout this time, the Lord was silent. He did not speak much to me that I could discern, and I'd been accustomed to hearing His voice all the time, encouraging me and leading me and directing me. I was dead. Life was simply a greased slide that was taking me down, down, down to a pit of despair. I did have one brother in Christ who visited me most every week, and he listened to my complaint and my questions and my unbelief. We prayed together. He endured me in love. I finally stopped asking why I was there and just simply traveled through each day. But I was hoping to die. I asked the Lord to take me many times. I wanted to die. Finally, my attorneys called and said they wanted to see me. I went to their offices where they told me the prosecutor wanted to close the case. It would be very telling about the legal system, if I recount the entire scene for the reader, but that's not fruitful for my purpose here. I was offered immediate release from jail and 5 years probation if I would simply enter a plea of no contest. Of course, I refused. I'm not going to do that. I want my day in court. Well, my wife and my grown sons, as well as a number of friends have been praying for me, asked me to take the deal. My wife told me, take the deal. They're going to put you in prison forever. How can they do that? I mean, well, they could have, I guess. One of my friends quoted Jesus when he said, agree with your adversary while you're in the way. Well, this was very hateful for me and very difficult, but because nobody wants their name associated with a crime. Anyway, especially one who claims Christ and ministers to others, it was even worse for me. If I'd have been engaged in criminal activity and if I'd have been guilty of stuff, that would have been another situation. but this was impossible. Anyway, my life was over. I just quietly took the deal and I became a recluse. I really did. And the nature of the accusation made it impossible for me to return home to my family. I had to find lodging in other places. So anyway, a friend took me in and I stayed with him. 5 years was a long time to be free, but in limbo. I wasn't free at all. I was just in limbo. Well, I spent that 5 years pretty quiet. I had a website advertising myself as a storyteller for seniors in assisted living places. And I was able to earn minimum amounts of money serving seniors, entertaining them with history and biographies. And I funneled my meager Social Security benefits to my wife to help in raising the kids. I still believed God, and I knew I was born again. If I died, I'd go to heaven. But there was not the same fellowship I had known for those first 30 years. I was just plowing through each day, waiting for the 5 years to pass. I didn't know what my future held, but I was relatively certain it would not include any kind of ministry. Well, the end of the 5 years came, and I'd been living in a different county from where I was placed on probation. 3 months before my discharge, the probation officer charged me with a probation violation having to do with my website. The charge went before the judge who originally sentenced me, and he dismissed the charges and released me from probation. I thought I was free. I didn't feel like I was free, but it seemed I must have been free. But the prosecutor in the county where I'd been living had me picked up on a new felony charge related to my original charges. By the way, those charges, they have been deemed unconstitutional now. They couldn't do that to me today. I didn't have any money, and so I was given a court-appointed lawyer. I don't want to comment on that. If you've ever had that, you know what that's about. Well, the judge sent me to prison. 5 months to 3 years. My wife and I were both just numb over that. It was just awful. Anyway, so I was placed in a cell in a county jail with 9 other men who were serving county jail time. It was late at night, and the Lord woke me, told me to find a Bible. There were several in the cell. Standing quietly in the cell, drawing light from the corridor, he told me to read Daniel 4:13 and following. This is the story of Nebuchadnezzar, who was driven from his throne to the fields where he lived as an animal until God brought him back to his throne as another man. He then reminded me of what Jesus told Peter, that Satan had asked to have him so he could sift him as wheat. I wept as I recalled that his faith held because Jesus had prayed for him. My why question was answered. I no longer had any questions about God. Why? Now it's just a matter of kind of sorting it out and discerning all the things that happened and go back and pay attention to what was really going on so I could see what God was doing. And I have. The Lord continued talking with me at that point. He said I'd be going to the state penitentiary in Jackson, Michigan for a few weeks. While there, I was to read the entire New Testament again. He then told me he would send me to a minimum security camp where I was to pray daily about all that he would show me. Just as he had said, I completed my read of the New Testament, and I was transferred to a minimum security camp across the street that actually resembled an adult daycare center. No bars or anything like that. I shared a cubicle with 7 other men who were incarcerated there and had a lot of freedom to roam through the day. And I walked 5 to 6 miles every day praying. Well, the Lord had told me that when reading, I was not just to see what he was saying, I was to ask why. It's interesting. Why? Not just what. I've heard preachers say, don't ask God why. Well, that's not true. He told me, how can I understand if I don't ask him why? So I asked him why. Everything I read. And that's why I understand a lot about God and about the world, and about heaven, and about you, and about me. And I see through completely different eyes. Anyway, the Lord had told me that when I was reading, I'm not to just ask see what he was saying, but ask why. I spent a total of 6.5 months at 2 different camps before being paroled to what was actually like a house arrest for the next 18 months. My odyssey of almost 11 years was being wrapped up, and I kept a journal of what he showed me. This post would be way too long. What I'm saying to you would be way too long if I enumerated all that he said and did in me throughout that time. Suffice it to say, I would willingly return to that 2-year stretch if I could be assured that God would be with me exactly as he was then. He was with me, got me up in the morning, held my hand, talked to me, walked with me. I had never had such close fellowship with the Father as I did when I was in prison and on parole. The things he showed me are almost unspeakable. I share some of them as I go, just as a course, but he showed me an awful lot. Anyway, so I am now apprehending just what it is that he originally apprehended me for. His purpose is not for ministry. Ministry was one of his tools to shape me, and as was the accusation and the jail, probation, new charges, tethered parole, and now I have full freedom. I'm back at home with my wife and my children. We're all back together. So anyway, but God's plan is for eternity. That is where real ministry will begin. We as his saints, we must understand his eternal purpose and embrace his dealings. His saints must understand the nature of heaven as well as the world. We must be able to overcome the world, the flesh, and the devil. His saints must have the full life of God formed in them and be prepared to actually join God in ruling the universe, and that he will expand it to accommodate us. God has enlarged himself in us. Oh, the mystery is so lovely, wonderful, and past speaking. This journey is not a life of external ministry and service, although we are engaged in service to him. But this path is a path of the heart, where the soul is fully transformed in God, into God himself. The Apostle Paul, I think, said it best, that I may know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings, being made conformable to his death, if by any means I may attain unto the resurrection of the dead. God's eternal purpose is to form us into the image of Christ, into the likeness of God the Father. I'm going to talk to you about righteousness before long. What righteousness really is, in effect, you are righteousness. You don't just have righteousness. You are righteousness in the earth. So if you're running this race, embrace everything that comes your way. God is guiding all your steps. His plans for you are good and they're right. And he's not of this world, and nothing of him resembles this world whatsoever. Don't care about your reputation. That was a big deal for me. Here I am sitting in jail accused of a crime that they're going to put me in prison for, and I had no defense. I had nothing. The accusation is the evidence. It's awful. And so there I am, and I thought about my life. I thought about all that I'd done. I thought about the fact that I'd left my life behind to go and preach the gospel. I had no stock in trade. I had no way to support myself, no way to, and not only that, how could I ever go back out and minister again, teach, preach, anything with this kind of a thing on my head? That's where I was, reputation. Let me tell you about Jesus, though. Jesus tells us in Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 through 8, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, didn't think it robbery to consider himself equal with God, but he made himself of no reputation. So reputation is highly exalted and overrated. Don't worry about your reputation. The Apostle Paul was a prisoner as well. He was confused. He was convicted of all kinds of things. He was a murderer. Jesus became sin. His name was blasphemed and still is today. Don't worry about your reputation. I don't care what anybody thinks about me, especially those who don't know me. Those who know me, they know me. Those who don't know me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I died. Anyway, so seek to be known in the heavens, not on the earth, where your real citizenship is recorded. You're a resident of both heaven and earth today. Your spirit inhabits eternity. But your soul, your body, and your spirit are also here on earth. You're going to get a new body someday that's going to be able to roam heavens. But right now you're in this body of clay, this flesh. It's of earth. And you're not really trapped here because you've been seated with him and raised with him together with all of us into heavenly places, to embrace that, to lay hold of that, and allow that to work out in you so that you can live with that knowledge that every day of your waking day, every moment, you're aware, I'm a son of God. I'm not a sinner. I'm not a part of this world. I have power. I'm a son of God. To have that mindset in you all the time. Anyway, this earth is a septic tank. I mean, it's useful, though, for our transformation. Therefore, walk as a citizen of heaven. And the blessing of the Lord that maketh rich, and he adds no sorrow to it, will be upon you. God bless you.